What's up y'all, Ryan here yet again, and today we're talking about MIDI drum grooves again. The reason is I got a ton of comments on my past few videos here on YouTube and on Instagram and TikTok about how I actually use MIDI grooves to write with. So today we're gonna dive into that, and I'm not gonna show you a fully produced track or anything today. I'm gonna show you a raw process of me actually writing a track using MIDI drum grooves. So we're over here in Logic now, and you'll see that I use 4 total MIDI grooves from the new Loudstakk Punk MIDI Grooves pack that Ron was nice enough to send over to me, so you can consider this a sponsored video. But these are actual grooves that I use literally every day at this point, because as you'll see a little bit later on, there's more than just punk in here, and it's pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and take a listen real quick. All right, so as you're seeing on screen here, that was a very bare bones track, right? I have 4 total tracks going on. I have 2 left and right guitars, I have 1 bass track, and then I have the Punk MIDI Grooves that I'm actually using Toontrack's death metal kit with, which is hilarious, because obviously this is a punk and pop punk style MIDI Grooves pack. Let's make this a little bigger here. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna duplicate my drum track, and I'm going to mute the original one and turn off the drums on it. The reason is we're going to build this from scratch again here. So let's go ahead and listen to this without any drums at all. So that riff that you heard right there was the original riff I started out with. So if we mute the bass, you should be able to hear my guitar now. So that was what I started with here. I'm gonna mute the other guitar tracks real quick. So what I do as far as writing with MIDI grooves inside of Logic, up in the top right hand corner you'll see my browser. And then if I click on all files here, I can navigate to my MIDI drum loops folder. I've navigated to the one where I've saved all of my Loudstakk MIDI grooves. In a past video you've seen me use the metal ones. In this video we're gonna use the Punk MIDI grooves. Now, when you first open it up, there's going to be a ton of different drum libraries in here, and that's because Ron has gone ahead and mapped all of these for the different popular libraries out there, making sure that you'll be able to use them with whichever ones that you own. So since I like to write with EZdrummer a lot, I'm gonna go ahead and click on Loudstakk Punk MIDI Grooves with Toontrack, and then we're presented with the different types of grooves that we'll have to choose from. So we've got fast fills and fast grooves, fast intros, mid-tempo, and then slow. Those all correspond with tempos, obviously, but I wrote this at 190 BPM. I didn't write this with any drums in mind. And so I went to a mid-tempo fills here because I always like to start it out with something a little bit extra. You know, this is going to be just a really short little snippet of a song that I'm going to post to social media. And I wanted it to, you know, catch people's attention right away. And so what I do is you'll see all of these fills here. Don't really feel like you have to have it set to 138 BPM. That's just what he wrote this fill at. It'll sound great at any BPM unless you're at like 300 or something like that. And then it'll sound like a death metal fill or something like that, which you can totally do. I used the mid-tempo fill number 1 though, and I literally just drag and drop it onto my timeline here, click up here, and let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see. All right, and so you can see all the different MIDI notes here. If I double click on that, I can actually see and edit the MIDI at this point. And you'll see that it's already pre-humanized because he played these in on an electric kit, and he made sure that everything was adjusted properly so that no crazy like 127 velocities or anything like that. But let's listen to this little fill. So I love fills like that going into a song, but also going into like a chorus or anything like that. That's a really, really good fill. But let's say that I didn't want that fill. Let's go with mid-tempo fill 18, for instance. I don't remember what this one even sounds like, so let's drop that in. I mean, that could work for all I know. Let's go ahead and listen and see what it sounds like in the context. Let me get my guitar. Let's get my guitar going there again. All right, let's listen. Yeah, I don't think that one works for that intro. All right, so let's go ahead and undo and go back to the original fill that I chose there. Now we need something that fits the actual riff itself. So if we go ahead and listen to the original riff. All right, so that's what it sounds like. Now let's go ahead and navigate back to our main folder, And let's go ahead and, I don't know, that feels like a mid-tempo groove, right? So we've got classic punk here, we've got hardcore punk, we've got pop punk, we've got post-hardcore, post-punk, and psychobilly. Now, to me, this riff has a very pop punk, but on the verge of metalcore though. This could easily have some pop punk vocals over it, or even like easycore if you think of like Chunk No Captain Chunk and A Day to Remember and stuff like that. It could easily go in that direction too. So I'm gonna go for post-hardcore actually, is what I ended up choosing for it. And because of the nature of this riff, I really wanted something that's not like fast double bass, but I wanted a good like driving kick going to this. And so what I did then is I just drug through the first of each of these and listened to it. Obviously that one does not fit. So then let's go to chaotic breakdown and see what that sounds like. We're getting there, starting to click there. Now let's see, post-hardcore 8 on the floor, that definitely is already just by title giving off the vibe that I want. Easily fits that part and honestly sounds good. That's something that I would have written if I were actually playing the drums or programming the drums myself. That right there fits the exact vibe that I was going for this. Now, when I was writing this riff though, that was as far as I got because I hadn't written any drums yet. I hadn't even gotten this MIDI pack yet, but that riff was as far as I got. So let's go ahead and try something a little bit different here. I'm gonna go back and we're gonna mute this. Let's go ahead and listen to the post-hardcore chaotic breakdown 1. So the reason is I want to point out how much this can change the feel of what you're writing. So we're going to actually try and rewrite that same riff to that specific drum groove now instead of the original one that I used. So you can see my original riff that I wrote did not fit that new drum groove at all, but it did fit it once I warped it a little bit. And that's the beauty of writing with MIDI drum grooves. It's like writing with a real drummer in the room. And I know that sounds dumb, it sounds like a commercial here, but that's how I treat it because I don't have a drummer that I can jam with. I have to rely on tools like this to help spark creativity in me. Because a lot of the times, and I know a lot of you guitarists will relate to this, I get stuck in the same exact rhythmic ruts. And those rhythmic ruts are really hard to break out of when you don't have drums to write to. If you're just writing to a metronome, which is a good thing to do, definitely please, please, please write to a metronome. You heard how sloppy I was playing there. I need to do more of it myself. But when all you do is write to a metronome or nothing at all, you do tend to get stuck in those rhythmic ruts where you only write the same rhythms over and over and over again. And that's what something like just dropping random MIDI grooves into your timeline can really help you with. Find your idea on the guitar first if you have to, drop some drum loops in there, and then start writing to those drum loops. You'll end up changing where the downbeats are, you'll end up changing where the emphasis is on certain parts of the riff, and it can make things incredibly more interesting and more fun to play for you as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and listen to what I wrote next. Now to put in perspective, I had not yet written this part when I started using this MIDI drum pack, and the drum pack is actually what helped me to write this next part because I had no idea where I wanted to go with this next. I just knew that I wanted it to be like a pop punk chorus, right? I didn't want anything technical. I wanted it to be able to have room for vocals to sing over it. I did not write any vocals for it yet, guilty as charged there, but I wanted it to fit that kind of vibe. So let's go ahead and listen to the guitar. So that second half of the chorus is actually what I wrote first, and I wrote it with this in mind. And so this is the drum groove that I dropped in because I knew I really wanted a forward driving beat for this chorus to feel very upbeat and very pop punk for lack of a better phrase here. So let's go ahead and listen to that with the drums now, and we'll hear both guitars. So, but for me, that didn't fit the beginning of a chorus. For me, the beginning of a chorus needs to start out a little bit slower, maybe a little bit more dynamic than that. So I found this MIDI groove next. So that one fit the bill for me pretty well because it's got a really nice groove to it. It's not just a straight driving force, because that's what comes next. Now I'm gonna play along with it this time. You're gonna hear my guitar live and you're not going to hear the original guitars. So what I want you to notice here and really think about when you're using MIDI grooves is how those two different drum beats made me change the way I was playing that exact same riff. The chords are the same, but the way I play it, the way I strum it, the way I transition is completely different between those two, and that changes the energy entirely as well. That's something you may not think about unless you have a MIDI groove playing behind you. If you're just listening to a metronome, you can get it, but it's not going to sound great. Now, to put that in perspective for you, I'm going to play that without drums right now. So let's go ahead and delete everything I just did. And I'm just going to turn on the metronome. And so we shouldn't hear any drums here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do it. All right, and now we're going to unmute the drums and see how that matches up with it, minus my sloppy playing, obviously. So as you hear, it kind of fits it, but you can hear that my downbeats and everything are not in the right place on the guitar. I didn't play with anything but a metronome. And again, that's only from seconds after hearing it with the drums too, and I still didn't play it the way that it should sound with drums. Now let's go ahead and play that one more time with the drums. All right, so guilty, I changed it a little bit there at the end because it just kind of felt right. I just changed the progression slightly, but the strumming patterns and the way I was striking the strings and the way I was embellishing on the downbeats and everything, that was all influenced by the drums. And that's why I love writing to drum MIDI grooves, because it helps me to do that. It helps me to think about it. It helps me to not think about it, actually, because it just kind of happens in the moment. You saw it as I was playing there. This was all live recorded. There's nothing weird going on. There's no pre-mixing. There's no pre-choosing or anything of that sort. This is just me in the writing process to show you how I use these. Now, as you'll see, if we scroll through here, this is just one folder of a ton of different breakdowns and a ton of different drum beats. If we go back, we can go into classic punk, and we have break beats, we have shuffles, we have all kinds of different beats in here. And what's cool about this is you're really not going to run out anytime soon of just these ones. And they can be used for a ton. This says hardcore punk, right? You can use this for metal. You can start blending styles of drums, and that's what makes things super fun and super interesting. Especially if you're not a drummer, because it helps a ton, because you may never write these by programming and clicking in MIDI. This may just not be something that's in your wheelhouse, and that's fine. It's not in my wheelhouse. I am not a great drummer. And that's why it's really nice to be able to use stuff like this. It just makes it so much more convenient, to be honest with you. And it's why when I want to write something, I almost always start with some sort of a MIDI groove. But if you go back and listen to the majority of the different riffs and everything that I've posted here on YouTube to Instagram to TikTok, you can almost bet that there was a MIDI groove used in those. And I have no problems with that whatsoever. I know there's still those people that are on the fence out there that think that it's cheating. I don't think that is cheating, because a drummer wrote these and I never would have been able to write these. They sound great. They work really, really well. You saw that it's literally just drag and drop into here. And that's convenience that you just don't get when it comes to programming drums any other way. So I really hope that you check out the Loudstakk Punk MIDI Grooves pack. It's linked down in the description. That is not an affiliate link or anything like that. I just really do support what Ron is doing over at Loudstakk, and I really do use these grooves literally every time that I write. So thank you all for watching. Until next time, peace and love. Get out there and write something today.